Is it true that poverty causes terrorism? Occupying Till He Comes at Southwest Prophecy Ministries.
Welcome again, friends. This is Dane Rome, your announcer for today's Last Days Beacon program. Thank you for listening, and thanks for joining us. Just a reminder that these programs are supported by your gifts to this ministry. If you would like to contribute to this ongoing faith ministry, which deals with biblical prophecy and current events, simply go to our website to contribute. Our website address is www.swpm.us. You will find a donate link on the homepage. The website address again is www.swpm.us. Thank you for your prayers and support for this ongoing faith ministry. On today's program, Dr. Schnitker interviews Carol Rushton regarding her brand new book entitled Understanding Israel and the Middle East. This book is subtitled Myths, Misconception, and the Truth About Israel and Her Neighbors. In this 25-chapter book, Carol deals with many of the lies and anti-Israel propaganda that we hear so often in the Western media. Carol lived in Israel for 8 years while working for the Jerusalem Post. She also studied the Middle East and Bible prophecy for most of her life. All of this knowledge and experience is included in this very timely book released on the 70th anniversary of the modern state of Israel. So let's join Dr. Schnitker and Carol Rushton for today's informative message.
Thank you, Dane, and welcome, friends, for another exciting broadcast at Southwest Prophecy Ministry. This is an exciting time at our ministry. We have just, by the grace of God, published our third book entitled Understanding Israel and the Middle East. This book is subtitled Myths, Misconceptions, and the Truth About Israel and Her Neighbors. This book has 25 chapters and is 175 pages long. And what an appropriate time to be publishing a book such as this, as we are celebrating Israel's 70th birthday as a modern nation. The return of the Jews to their ancient homeland is the signal miracle of the 20th century, an event which is not only the fulfillment of several Bible prophecies, both Old and New Testaments, but is also the event that starts the countdown clock to the second coming of Christ. So that clock has been ticking for 70 years, and every day brings us closer to that blessed second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, who, of course, will establish peace not only in the Middle East, but throughout this war-weary world. And what a privilege it is to have back in studio today the author of the book, Carol Rushton. Well, Carol, it's great to have you back in studio today.
It is great again to be here.
Well, we have been covering a lot of the issues in your book. Again, there are 25 chapters. And so, of course, we're not covering all of them, just enough to give you an irresistible urge to purchase the book for yourself and your friends. But today we're going to deal with a couple of the chapters in your book. And again, the book is organized basically around charges that are rendered against Israel by her Arab neighbors and, of course, rapaciously picked up and repeated by the Western press. So one of those chapters has to deal with the charge that poverty causes terrorism. And of course, if that was true, then if Israel would just give her Arab neighbors everything they want, there, of course, would be no more terrorism. That seems pretty simple to me. So, Carol, what is your view? Does poverty cause terrorism?
I have heard this for so many years. It doesn't seem to matter what administration we have in the United States government. It doesn't seem to matter if it's Republican or Democrat. most of the spokespeople for that particular administration, they will toe this politically correct line that says, yes, poverty causes terrorism, and if these people were just well educated and they had employment opportunities and they had the opportunity to become wealthy or self-sustaining, if we could just get them out of poverty, boy, all our problems would be solved. And just one of the more recent examples, when Barack Obama was the president of the United States, one of the State Department spokespersons was Marie Harf, and she echoed this politically correct line in February 2015. And I'll tell you what she said. We cannot win this war by killing terrorists. We cannot kill our way out of this war. We need, in the longer term, medium and longer term, to go after the root causes that lead people to join these groups, whether it's lack of opportunity for jobs, and then she kind of trails off. Well, is that true? Let's take a look at some of the more well-known terrorists and see what their educational and employment opportunities were. So we're going to start with one of the more famous ones, and that's Osama bin Laden. Now, Osama bin Laden's father was very industrious. He had a construction business, and he made a lot of money. And the bin Laden family was said to be the second wealthiest in Saudi Arabia. They had anywhere between $50 million and $300 million. It just depends on what source you go to. The family also owned the marketing rights in the Middle East to Snapple, Volkswagen, Audi, and other businesses as well. Osama bin Laden even attended Oxford University in England for a while. So you're talking about a very wealthy family, a very well-educated family, but Osama bin Laden still became a terrorist. So what's up with that? And I'd like to talk about a few more here. Yasser Arafat, one of the arch terrorists of our day. He was actually born in a little village outside of Cairo, and he wasn't really a Palestinian by his own definition. Actually, after Arafat took over the PLO, money poured in from all the Arab states. And even though Arafat cried poor, poor, poor all the time and had his hand constantly out begging for money, he became pretty wealthy. And after the...
But he always dressed like he was a beggar.
Yes, he sure did, didn't he?
He was quite a successful beggar, though.
Yes, he was. And he played the, kind of scruffy-looking, poverty-stricken Palestinian to the hilt. But actually, after the signing of the Oslo Accords in the 1990s, and again, money poured into their coffers, there were a lot of reports in Israel. These never made it to the Western news media, but there were a lot of reports that Yasser Arafat and his cronies, his big buddies in the PLO, were building themselves mansions and villas in the PLO-controlled territories. This news somehow never made it out of the Middle East. I wonder why. But he skimmed a lot of money, and there's another chapter in here where I discuss where Yasser Arafat got his money, and his widow and daughter are reportedly living in Paris, and I don't think they're doing too bad. And this is, I'd like to take one more here, and this is another very, very famous terrorist, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He was a member of Al-Qaeda. He actually earned a degree in mechanical engineering in North Carolina. He was employed by the Qatar Ministry of Electricity and Water. He was a project engineer, And he was also known, or had the reputation, as a ladies' man. He had, and for living a very extravagant lifestyle, traveling all over the world, throwing parties and dinners and women, wine, and song. So, I mean, we're just touching on a few of these, but there's a whole list of terrorists who are pretty well heeled. And we might also mention that the current president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, he is planning to have a $13 million palace.
I've seen a picture of the plan. It's quite extravagant. To think that only one man, you'd think this was like an apartment complex for the super rich. So that's going to be his little luxury pad as the exalted leader of the PLO.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to also combine maybe some offices. But you look at the and you can find it on the internet. You look at this place, and it comes to mind. Well, if your people are so downtrodden and poor, why do you have to have a $13 million palace and office space? I'm sorry, but this is, I think, a little out of line.
It does make the White House look like a slum in comparison.
It does. And some of these mansions that Palestinian Authority or the PLO or Hamas, or you have these connections, they would put a lot of mansions and houses here in the United States to shame.
They really would. Well, now, one of the other charges, Carol, that is rendered against Israel is that the Muslims in Israeli territories are treated unfairly. And one example of this that you'll often hear is that they are denied free access to their holy sites. Is that true?
Well, nothing could be further from the truth. In Israel, the Israeli government does a great job. And I lived over there for 8 years, so I know. The Israeli government does a great job of allowing free access to all holy sites in the state of Israel. It doesn't matter whether it's a Christian holy site, an Islamic holy site, a Jewish holy site. You're free to go into any holy site that you want to. You might have to pay a small fee to go in, depending upon who's managing that holy site, because if there are certain religious groups who manage these holy sites, they're allowed to, and they do have to pay for upkeep. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes there is a fee if you want to. Sometimes not, but sometimes there is. But you're free to go into whatever holy site you want to. If the Muslim, you can go into the Al-Aqsa Mosque in the Dome of the Rock as a tourist. You can go in as a Christian tourist. You can go into the Dome of the Rock as a Christian tourist. And of course, certainly Muslims are free to go up there and pray every Friday, because you have thousands of them who flock to the Temple Mount on Jerusalem.
Let me also say that the Muslims do control their own holy sites.
Yes, they do.
For example, I visited the Dome of the Rock in 1977, and it was totally under Muslim control. They made the rules. I remember we had to take off our shoes. They took our cameras away. Of course, they sold us pictures once we got in, but they wouldn't allow us to take any pictures. So the Muslims are in complete control of their holy site. I saw no Israeli soldiers. I saw no interference from any Jewish authorities in terms of the complete control that the Muslims have, at least of this particular holy site.
Yeah, the Waqf is the authority, is the religious authority. They on the Temple Mount, and that was set up, I think, by the Jordanian government. So the Jordanian government actually controls that temple.
Now,
Temple Mount.
This is a little historical aside, Carol, but didn't the Israeli Defense Forces take control of the Temple Mount in the Six-Day War, 1967? Didn't they win this in a legitimate battle with the Arab countries that ganged up on them?
Oh yeah, and they of course one of the Israeli military figures. He was so excited because he was yelling over the over his military phone, Har Habayit Bayadenu, Har Habayit Bayadenu, which means in Hebrew, the Temple Mount is in our hands, the Temple Mount is in our hands. Boy, people were just thrilled. They were so excited. And they even had the Israeli flag up there. Well, one of the generals, Moshe Dayan, who was I think the top-ranking Israeli military general at that time, he ordered the Israeli flag to be removed and everything returned to the Waqf. Now, the Waqf was ready to hand over everything because...
Well, they just lost the war.
They just lost the war. They knew what was going on.
Right. It's called surrender.
Yes.
Defeat. So,
and Moshe Dayan made the decision, hey, that's okay, guys. We're not going to take control. Now, we have to look at this also in the light of Bible prophecy, because if the Jews had retained the Temple Mount at that time, I can tell you right now, there wouldn't have been too long before there would have been a temple. Mm-hmm. So, what does that say in terms of Bible prophecy? So evidently things were not right at that moment for the Jews to rebuild their temple. And then of course we have all the other things that would go on. You're talking about Matthew 24, 2 Thessalonians 2. We have the entire book of Revelation. Mm-hmm. So all of those events would have been speeded up probably.
And I think of what Peter said, I believe it's in 2 Peter, about how God is not slack concerning his promises, but he is long-suffering, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. And that's in the context of the second coming. So even what seemed to be politically and diplomatically a bad decision for Israel is an indication of the long-suffering of God.
Sure.
That he has held back his judgment, the judgments that will come during the tribulation, because he's long-suffering. And the age of the Gentiles has been able to continue so that more folks could get saved before the tribulation judgments fall upon the earth.
Sure, absolutely. That's absolutely true. And we can look at God's hand. And this is also worked out not too badly for Israel in the context of, I'm sure Jews are really anxious they want their temple built, but it's allowed Israel to develop as a state. We've had more Jewish refugees. You have more Jews being born, and now the long-sufferingness of the Jews. They've also had a lot of tragedies as well during this particular time. But being as now it's the 70th year of the state of Israel, I think that's quite an achievement. So. And I can tell you honestly that when I was in Israel, I've never felt God's presence more strongly than I did when I was in Israel. I would like to make one last point. When in the phrasing of this question, that Muslims don't have free access to their holy sites, the only people in Israel who don't have free access to their holy sites are the Jews. They can't go up to the Temple Mount. They can't go up to the Temple Mount and pray. There's no temple there. They can't even go up to the Temple Mount and pray. If a Jew goes up to the Temple Mount and they're spotted by somebody as looking like they're in a posture of prayer, I can tell you right now, they're kicked off. The Israeli government does not allow that. And, they're even trying to go to the Western Wall or the Kotel, the Wailing Wall, to pray. The Muslims will sometimes throw rocks and garbage and on and other objects, whatever thing they can, anything that they can use to hurt the Jews who are down praying below them, they will do. And of course, we also had the killing not too long ago of a couple of Israeli policemen. There were some Arabs on top of the Temple Mount, and they got some guns and they started taking shots at Israeli policemen, and a couple of the policemen lost their lives. So I just think it's so ironic that in the Jewish state, Jews don't even have access to their holy sites, but they are trying to protect the rights of others to their religious holy sites.
Well, the truth is often, again, exactly the opposite of what we're told. And propaganda, seems like propaganda is successful to the, in proportion to the outrageousness of it, that the bigger lies tend to be swallowed more than the subtle, smaller lies. And this is one of those. Well, we're going to have to call it quits for today. Friends, thank you for joining us as we continue to work through many of the issues that Carol writes about in her brand new book entitled Understanding Israel and the Middle East. And now our announcer, Dane Rome, will share how you may obtain a copy of this informative new book.
Thank you, Dr. Schnitker. Today, we're offering the latest book published by Southwest Prophecy Ministries. The book is entitled Understanding Israel and the Middle East by Carol Rushton. The concluding chapter of the book is written by Dr. Schnitker and deals with God's peace plan for the Middle East. This professionally published book has 25 chapters and is 175 pages in length. You may obtain a copy of the Understanding Israel and Middle East for a gift of $9.99 plus $2 for shipping and handling. To obtain your copy, go to our website, www.swpm.us. Go to our bookstore and type in Understanding Israel and the Middle East. The website address again is www.swpm.us. Well, friends, please join us again for next week's Last Days Beacon program, brought to you by Southwest Prophecy Ministries. Until then, this is your announcer, Dane Rome, saying thanks for listening.